Hello, I'm Elaine, the Ninja Life Coach, and I'm here today talking with Amy Beth. And we're talking about a subject that is a very serious subject. We're going to talk today about abuse. And if you are church going folks and you're sitting in your church pew and you look to your left and you look to your right, chances are one in the three of the ladies sitting in the pew with you at church on Sunday are going to be a victim of abuse. And Amy Beth has been through a horrible experience, and we're just going to talk with her today. And she's very brave for coming forward with this, but we're wanting to get the word out so that people will kind of know what to look for, what the warning signs are, and maybe they can avoid being in that situation themselves. Amy Beth, thank you for coming forward. And I understand we've got ongoing litigation about this, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to be careful what we say, and there's some things that we cannot talk about because literally I've got 9 pages of things right here that Amy Beth has written down, and there's some really bad stuff in here. Not all of it we're going to be able to talk about, but we're going to get as much information to you today as we can. Amy Beth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, and I just want to say, first off, thank you so much, Elaine, for thinking enough of me to invite me here and to elaborate some more on my story and hopefully help some other women who are either currently in an abusive situation or are coming out of one like myself. When she messaged me, I didn't really think twice about coming here, so thank you.
Thank you. It's very brave of you, Amy Beth, for coming forward.
Thank you. So my background, I come from a law enforcement, Christian, Catholic household. There was never really any form of abuse growing up. My family's very nurturing and loving. I would say that I didn't have much dating experience getting into this relationship, which eventually turned into a marriage. I was very naive and did not really want to ever see the bad or negative in people. Or if I did, I would try to turn it around and try to see something good about it.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how you guys met. How did you meet this guy?
So it was through social media, and I had to make a Instagram my senior year of high school. And probably about several months before he ended up messaging me, he had been following me on Instagram through mutual friends for probably about a year-ish, because I was in my freshman year of college when he finally messaged me. And I believe he had seen me out line dancing one evening, and about a week later he messaged me and was like, "Hey, I think I saw you. Would you want to go out?" And
but you had never met him face to face?
I'd never met him face to face. I think
Okay.
we just had a handful of maybe mutual friends of people who I had gone to high school with.
Okay. Let me ask you here, I know we were going to talk about this later, and we can later, but how big of a role did social media play in this relationship? It sounds like it was a part.
Yeah, I would say it played a big part. Definitely he portrays himself one way on the internet, I think. So it definitely kind of wasn't good.
Okay. All right. Okay, so on your first date, what happened?
So our first date, it was mainly just small things that I really overlooked. I would say he was reckless in his vehicle and would speed. He talked about his ex-girlfriends and his past intimate life, if you will. So I pretty much just chalked it all up to he was just showing off.
Okay.
You know, typical boy, just trying to show off.
Okay. But those were actually warning signs.
Correct.
Okay.
Looking back now, correct.
Okay. What do you think was one of the early warning signs when you were dating?
There was a lot, but he became very jealous very quickly. He had a very short temper, which goes hand in hand with that, and he was very controlling as well.
How did the jealousy manifest itself?
I would say someone would message me of the opposite sex and he'd get really angry, or I would have to message someone for the opposite sex for, say, for school or something, and he'd get really angry.
Okay.
Very upset.
Okay.
Or we would be out in public and someone would look at me the wrong way and he'd explode.
Okay. I noticed you said here that he was very reckless in the car, especially if he got mad early on in your relationship.
Correct.
Is there any particular incident there that stands out in your mind?
This was probably the first incident where I saw him show more his true colors. And this was probably about 2 weeks into us dating, and we had gone to the gym in his hometown, and I was taking instructions from another female and her boyfriend on how to properly lift weights. And I look out the window and he has gotten into his vehicle and he's sitting there just like rocking. And I didn't really know what to make of it, so I ended up getting my things and went out there and hopped in the car and just didn't say anything because I wasn't sure what was going on. And when I got in there, he floored it in reverse and sped up.
Okay.
And he was just asking, "Do you know why I'm mad at you?" And I said, "I have no clue." Well, I guess it was because I was talking and listening to these other people while he was off doing his own thing there at the gym.
Okay. All right. You also said that he would call you one call after the other if he couldn't reach you.
Correct.
Was that normal behavior early on as well?
Yeah, if he couldn't reach me, like in the first call, he'd at least call again. And then depending on when it was, like he might call several more times or so.
With the texting, did he text as well too? Or was it just mainly phone calls?
He would text some, but it was mainly phone calls.
Okay.
I think so he could know like where I was.
Okay. All right. You said that he forced you to work out and lift weights that you couldn't lift.
Correct.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I enjoyed fitness and working out, and I always loved running. And I was on the cross country team in high school, but when I'd go and work out with him, if I wasn't able to do the amount of weight that he wanted me to do, he would like rip the weights out of my hand and slam them down and yell at me because I couldn't do it, or I could only do a certain amount of reps with him. But I wasn't used to working out and doing heavy weights like that, so you have to get your body adjusted.
Right.
And it's like he wanted me to do it instantaneously.
You showed me some pictures of some bruises that you had on your legs from working out. Was that after you were married, or was that early on in the relationship?
Well, I think the picture that I showed you was from before, but that happened all the time. My legs would get whelped up like that.
Okay. So early on, he was controlling and abusive in mannerisms, but it got worse.
Correct.
Okay. Now, your relationship that led up to your marriage, is that everything that you feel like you need to say about leading up to the marriage, or is there anything else you want to say there, Amy Beth?
There's so much that we could cover. The only other point that I would probably point out is him being just very disrespectful to everyone, and just very or especially to people he didn't like, or just very disrespectful to his parents. And they always say that saying, the way that he treats his mother is the way that he's going to treat you, and it's so true.
Oh my goodness.
So true.
You told me that he did not have a good relationship with his mother, did he?
No, or father. It was always a bickering, fighting, and I was kind of just there in the crossfire.
Okay.
And a lot of times this would happen behind closed doors.
Okay.
So a lot of people didn't really get to see a lot of this.
Okay. So your relationship leading up to your marriage. I'm going to read some of the things that you wrote here, and we'll just touch on whichever ones you want to touch on here. You said, I was someone to occupy his time because he couldn't ever be alone or do things by himself.
That is correct.
Okay. He forced you to ride dirt bikes and do other things with firearms, correct? That you were not comfortable with. Even though you were raised in a law enforcement household, the way he handled those firearms was, would you say, reckless?
I would say so, definitely.
I'm not trying to get into an area that we don't need to get into.
Correct. Well, I would say, like, while dating, I ended up getting my, well, I take this back. I ended up getting my carry permit shortly after we got married. And he wanted me to carry on me, which is fine, but there's a certain way to go about carrying a firearm on you, and it's not by yelling at you and telling you to put it on your hip, or yelling at you and like throwing it in your purse, or yelling at you and throwing it in your face. That's not the way to do it. That scares a person.
Right, because you were familiar with firearms because you were from a law enforcement background with your parents. Okay. You said he was very rough overall with you and started talking down to you and would scream if he couldn't get his way or you didn't agree with something. Now, this is still while you're dating. Now, this is leading up right up to the marriage that we're still talking about. And you were not allowed, this one really got me because I thought it was just ridiculous. He said you were not allowed to eat certain foods and he called you fat.
And he'd call me fat in front of some of his friends and just think it was funny. But after a while, once you've kind of been in a relationship with this type of person, they've broken you down so much already that when they tell you something like that or tell other people that, you start to kind of second guess, well, am I?
Right.
Which I wasn't. I weighed less than 110 pounds. So.
I was going to say, you probably don't weigh 100 pounds soaking wet, little girl. Okay. You said that your friends, his friends even, would pull you aside and say, why are you with him? How did you answer that?
I think, especially in the beginning and throughout the dating relationship, I would make excuses for him. And just say, well, I know, but I think he really has, like, a good heart. Like, I don't think he means anything by it.
Okay.
So I just try to defend him in different ways that I could.
Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next page, which is we're going to recap some of the early red flags in the relationship, Amy Beth, because this is really, really important that people understand what can happen early on in a relationship so that you can get out if you need to before you get married. You said he lied about everything and seemed to believe his own lies.
Which was very scary.
And one of them was he told people he was in medical school.
I remember that.
And he wasn't.
No.
Okay.
Not in medical school.
And he wanted to always have your undivided attention. He constantly criticized you and told you dressed like a soccer mom or a hooker.
It just depended on the day. One day he could say I dressed like a mom, and then the next day he'd say that I dressed like a hooker. So you just didn't know what you were going to get. There was no pleasing.
Oh my goodness. And what about the sink incident?
So there was an incident where we had rented a cabin. Some of my friends came, his parents came, several of his friends were there, and he had just gotten some of his hair cut off for boot camp. He was slowly taking it down, and he was having trouble styling it. Well, he asked one of my friends to come and grab me from upstairs to help him style his hair. So I walk in the bathroom, and he's just going crazy. And I wish people who have not been in a situation with someone like this cannot even grasp or possibly wrap their mind around how people like this, they just get so enraged. It's like something I've never seen in anyone. I've seen people get mad, but not to this extent.
It's like they're another person.
It is. It's like something overcomes them.
Yeah.
So he couldn't get his hair done correctly. So he ended up deciding to grab the sink and like shake it and pull it out of the, I think he was attempting to pull it out of the wall, and then he took his comb and like threw it down on the ground and cussing.
Okay. He threw a wallet and hit you in the eye.
Yes, and that was supposedly a accident, but like I've told so many people, I feel like I'd like to say some of the things that he did were accidents, but it's like every time I was with him, somehow I ended up getting hurt. Somehow I ended up getting hurt. It never failed.
Well, and one thing, there's an incident with where he threw you across the room and you hit your leg on a metal beam where he picked you up and threw you.
Yes, and this was a different cabin incident that we had rented a cabin, and I ended up hitting a metal beam, and I came up and went downstairs. I just kind of limped downstairs into the bedroom and laid on the bed, and I was crying a little bit, and because the bruise had already formed, and it was about that big on the inside of my leg. And he comes down there, shuts the door, and starts yelling at me and cussing me out because his friends were getting on to him because he's so careless and just threw me and did that. So they were mad that he had hurt me. And it was like, how dare you lead anyone to think I'm a bad person type of situation.
So are you saying that he put the blame on you for his own reckless behavior?
Correct. And it's not like he consoled me, or he wasn't worried about me. He was worried about himself.
Okay.
He didn't care.
All right. Then you said he made you second guess your sanity. That's very common in abuse. So, and things that were not right, he made them seem like they were.
Correct.
So
he's just very manipulative.
Okay. Now, one thing, we talked a little bit about social media, and social media there's a lot of online dating and people, connecting online and doing that sort of thing. What would you have to say about that, Amy Beth?
I think that's great. Always meet in a public lighted place.
Yeah.
I think for some people it works. Just really...
I know you all weren't online on a dating site,
Correct.
But you did meet on social media.
Correct.
Okay.
You just have to be very careful going into that.
Yeah.
Because, what you might see on their profile might be completely different how they actually are in person.
Was that the case with you?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
You said, I was so blind I would stick up for him. Because you loved him. And you wanted to be around people because he treated you better when he was with people.
Yes. Well, obviously he didn't treat me that great because people still pulled me aside, but it was better than what it was behind closed doors or just when it was him and me by ourselves.
Okay. He abused his dog one time in front of you as well.
And I still remember that. The dog had ended up peeing, and I think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he went out, grabbed it by the nape of its neck, and slammed it into his own urine. And that, you really have to watch how a man, like I said, treats his mom and treats animals, because that will eventually be you.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add leading up to the marriage? Anything else you feel like you want to say about that?
I think I noticed the lack of morals that were there with him and his family also, which I don't really want to get into his family.
Right, we don't need to.
I should have pounded into that a little bit more and noticed that it didn't match up with my morals and what I've been brought up knowing what's right and what's wrong. And I would also add, some of these things are not so good, but I thought, eventually, like, once we get married and he knows that, I'm not going anywhere, the jealousy would settle out, and I thought boot camp in the military would really change him for the better.
Yeah. But we're going to find out when we start talking about your marriage that it didn't.
Correct.
Okay, so I think we're going to take a little break right here. And this is part 1. This is the relationship leading up to marriage with Amy Beth. And we're going to do part 2 in a different video so that it doesn't get too long. But you're going to want to stay tuned and listen because there's a lot more that we're going to cover. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. God bless. Amy Beth, thank you.
Thank you.
Maranatha.